Man, after this latest episode and just this series of What If in general, I am so disappointed. Not in the way you might think, though. So stay tuned and find out. Cliffhanger! And welcome to my safe haven. Thank you guys so much for joining me here for another review on the BlackGayComicGeek channel. If this is your first time joining me, hey, welcome to my safe haven. Thanks for coming. Hopefully you like what you see. My actual name is Michael, and I like to talk about fantasy. I like to talk about sci-fi. I always say if it has blood, sex, gore, and magic, I am interested. I talk about comics. Basically, I talk about whatever I want, mostly within the fantasy, sci-fi, superhero genre. And I also like to talk about black and queer representation. So if that's your thing, pull up, subscribe, hit the like button, and hopefully you continue to follow me for more videos. But for the rest of you, if you are regulars, you are Gavenettes, I still need to come up with a name for like people that watch the channel. Safe Gaveneers. I don't know, whatever. It's still a work in progress. But for the rest of you, also, if you could please hit that like button, it'll help with the YouTube algorithm and everything like that. And also, what did you think about this episode of What If? What does this episode rank for you and everything like that? Let's get the conversation going. Like, comment, share, interact for the algorithm. Now let's talk about the season finale of Marvel's What If, episode 8. And with that said, if you couldn't tell by the title of this episode, we are talking spoilers. Spoilers. I'm going to blow my entire load in terms of thoughts regarding this episode. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, watch that first. Hit the like button, go watch the episode, and then come back here. So this episode is called What If the Watcher Broke His Oath? And the title basically tells you everything that you need to know from this episode, and it picks up right after the nice, lovely cliffhanger that was last week's episode. And we saw Uatu the Watcher going through the multiverse, gathering all the characters that we've seen in the other episodes to create what they called the Guardians of the Multiverse. And you ended up seeing the shot that we saw in the What If trailer, where you saw like Peggy Carter's Captain Carter, T'Challa's Star-Lord, Gamora, etc., all making up the Avengers lineup that we saw in the circle that we saw in the first Avengers movie when they first got together as the Avengers. And I thought this episode was fun. I enjoyed this episode. And the thing about the MCU and just comics in general is just getting to see all these different characters, or even different versions of characters that we know and love, interacting with each other. And that's essentially what this episode was. And even though I said episode 1 was my least favorite episode, and that's still valid to this day, I still love the character of Peggy Carter, and I still like seeing more of Peggy Carter and more of Captain Carter, and I'm still a little salty that Agent Carter ended up getting canceled, and there's been no announcement that it's being renewed for Disney Plus, because I would have loved to have seen more of her story unfold and how she developed as the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. and as the creator and founder of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, if you haven't seen the first 2 seasons of Agent Carter, I definitely implore you to watch it. It is currently on Disney Plus. No, I'm not being sponsored, unfortunately. Disney, Marvel, if you're out there, sponsor your boy. And I love the fight that happened between the Guardians of the Multiverse and Ultron. Like, this episode was essentially all payoff from the setup that happened from last week's episode, and I enjoyed the payoff. Like, obviously, like, one of my favorite characters in comics, not the MCU, but in comics, is Doctor Strange. I'm more prone to the supernatural side and more magical side of fantasy. That's why I love things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and out of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, my favorite character was always Willow. I love the character John Constantine on the DC side, the show Supernatural and everything. Like, yes, I love superheroes, but I'm more personally attracted to the supernatural element of fantasy, demons, magic, mysticism, etc. So I love the character of Doctor Strange. That's why I was so disappointed that his movie wasn't all that magical. And that's also why I'm like, as much as I love the character of Storm has always been one of my favorite superheroes of all time. I'm like, she has the potential to wield magic in comics. Let her use some magic, like, especially considering there aren't really that many black magic users in comics, or at least mainstream comics in Marvel and DC, period. So I'm like, come on, give Storm, like, give her literal black girl magic. Anyway, back on topic, off my rant. But yeah, the magical battle between Doctor Strange and Ultron using the Infinity Stone, like, I love that. Like, it reminded me of the Thanos and Doctor Strange fight, but much better, because this version of Doctor Strange, Supreme Strange, he's much more powerful than the version that we've seen in Avengers Infinity War. And even Ultron ended up acknowledging this during the fight, because without Doctor Strange, the fight would have been over, like, they all would have been defeated. And I'm like, is anybody else as satisfied as me that Killmonger pretty much got in this episode? Because at first, when Uatu recruited Killmonger, I was like, Killmonger, he's a villain. Why would you recruit him of all people? This is so stupid. But then obviously Uatu was smarter than that. Uatu's damn near a god. He had a bigger plan and a bigger picture. So when he found out that he foresaw everything that was going to happen and knew Killmonger was going to betray them, but recruited him on purpose to ended up trapping them in this pocket dimension, I was like, okay, I'm glad, because yeah, Killmonger's trash. And then also the sad thing about this episode, and what makes this episode bittersweet and much more treasured, is the fact that this episode is literally the very final performance that we will ever have from Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa. Like, this was the last episode of the season and the last episode that he recorded. And so after this What If episode, this is it for Chadwick Boseman's version of T'Challa. And also even more sad in a sense, because we didn't really get a lot from his character in this episode. We didn't get a lot of line delivery of dialogue in this episode. So that kind of sucks. Rest in peace to the king. But also, speaking of Wakanda, can I just say, y'all know how much I be thirsting over Michael B. Jordan. But like, his voice performance, especially in this episode, I thought was super weak. And I mean, I know Ron, my co-host when I go live, You Don't Read Comics, I know if he's watching this review, he's probably gonna laugh because he's a known Michael B. Jordan hater. He talks about it almost all the time we go live. So I know he's probably laughing like, see, I told you. But yeah, like, his voice acting was super weak in this episode. Like when he was talking to T'Challa and he's like, you're not my cousin, I was just like, or when he was talking to Doctor Strange, like, you should know better than, like, just all of his line delivery just felt phoned in. And I like Michael B. Jordan. Like, I enjoyed him in Creed 1 and 2, Chronicle, Just Mercy. Like, that movie had me crying in 2019, Just Mercy. But yeah, but this, like, vocal performance, this wasn't it. And that also just goes to show the difference between voice acting, theater acting, and film acting. There is a huge difference, and sometimes not all actors are capable of doing every single medium. Like, I've heard of there being great film actors that are terrible at theater, because with theater, you gotta be bigger, you gotta be boisterous, you also gotta be louder and project your voice, and a lot of film actors aren't able to do that. Like, it's easier to be bigger and tone it down a little bit as opposed to being used to toning it down and then trying to get bigger. Like, it's not as easy going the other direction. And not only just that, but you have to be bigger but still be authentic and still carry real, because yeah, no, I'm not gonna say what I was about to say, because yeah, I was gonna call an actor out that I saw live on Broadway and I was like, yeah, they're not good, but they're a great television and film actor. But anyway, let me not say that. I could edit that whole part out, but I'm not. And you know what else? What I forgot to mention in terms of like a weakness of this episode, and it's not necessarily this episode's fault in and of itself, but I do remember reading that Marvel's What If, this first season, was supposed to have 10 episodes. And so you definitely knew based on this episode that the Gamora episode, where I guess she killed Thanos, that was supposed to be maybe episode 9 or one of the episodes that was missing from the series. And so when they pulled up to that other universe with Tony Stark and Gamora on Sakaar, and they were like, Gamora, you've been chosen. And I'm like, who is this version of Gamora? Like, we've never seen her. So it's like, when we seen her character show up, you're just like, yeah, I feel like I'm missing something. Yeah, we did miss something, because I could tell, or you could tell, she was definitely supposed to get her own episode. So yeah, this pandemic has messed up a lot of these Marvel shows for the first season. Like, WandaVision was supposed to have a different finale. Falcon and Winter Soldier had an entire plot taken out. I think they changed some stuff around for Loki, and now the same thing is happening for What If. So yeah. But anyway, with that said, like, yeah, I enjoyed this episode. I'm kind of rushing through this review on purpose because there's something more specific that I want to talk about after this episode and just this series in general. And it's really just in the simple fact that this episode, because of like the relationship that they built with Natasha specifically and the character that they built, not even just in this episode, last week's episode, episode 3, like, This series has just shown me how disappointed I am in the portrayal of Natasha within the live action MCU. And I'm not talking about Scarlett Johansson. She can only do what's written for her character. I'm talking about in terms of how her character was portrayed and written within the live action MCU. And comparatively speaking to this What If series, like, I love this version, or every version, because episode 3 was a different version than this version because it was another universe, but I've loved every single version of Natasha that we've seen in What If compared to the live action version of Natasha. Like, her character just seemed way more of a character in What If, and she seemed way more integral to the entire Avengers mythos and universe than she did in live action. And then, like I talked about in my review for episode 3, how much building and how much understanding and how much chemistry and camaraderie and trust and everything like that we've got from the relationship between Nick Fury and Natasha in that one episode, episode 3, than we've gotten in all of the MCU. Or just even the build up from the relationship between Natasha and Clint. Like, they're supposed to be best friends. Like, Clint made her the godmother of his children, and yet we don't really get that much from their relationship, or we didn't get that much from their relationship in the MCU. I mentioned this in last week's review, but it's like we were constantly told about their relationship instead of shown their relationship. Like, they should have gotten a solo movie together, and a Hawkeye and Black Widow movie. Like, in all honesty, Captain America Winter Soldier should have been about Black Widow and Hawkeye. Not so much the Winter Soldier element of it, but the whole storyline of the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. Natasha and Clint are S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Captain America is not a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. So if anybody has an investment in the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D., it should have been the two S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. And I mean, I still to this day stand by the fact that it doesn't make sense, or it never did make sense, that Hawkeye was never involved in Captain America the Winter Soldier. As much as I love Captain America the Winter Soldier, it's definitely in my top 5 of Marvel movies. Yeah, like, just the crafting of it, I never thought made full sense. And I even love the little bit that we've gotten from the close friendship between Captain Carter and Natasha, and how Peggy said that Natasha is like one of her best friends ever. Now, granted, my instant thing was, I'm like, come on, like, and I'm like, because there's no representation, and then again, this is my thing, I'm like, could it be a little, like, what if there were actually mainstream queer relationships in the MCU? They didn't do it with Carol and Maria Rambeau, even though they were like totally lesbians, they were totally lovers. I always talk about my favorite ship being Captain America and Bucky, and then I say, like, after Steve Rogers went back to the past to go to Peggy, and I'm like, Bucky and Sam came together to come together to get over their relationship with Steve Rogers. And I'm like, hell, even in Thor Ragnarok, they teased that Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie had another Valkyrie lover. But yeah, again, we never, aside from like the Joe Russo moment in Avengers Endgame, we talked about how his husband got snapped away, we still haven't gotten any main queer character. And that's not a main character. And I know Phaetos is coming in Eternals, but I'm like, I don't know, something about Eternals, I'm nervous. So I'm just like, Peggy and Nat, I'm like, when she said BFF, and somebody I follow on TikTok, I think, what did they say? When Captain Carter said, you're like my BFF or something like that, that stands for best friends. But yeah, that was the thing that I was talking about in the intro for this video, where I was like, after this series, there's something that's left me disappointed. It's just the treatment of Natasha Romanoff. And I'm like, can we get a do-over, especially with the way this episode ended, how they took that Natasha from another universe, put her in a different universe where they lost their Natasha, and things are just continuing. They kind of even hinted like, oh, without me, this universe is a mess. And I'm like, I know the whole thing with Scarlett Johansson is over, and more than likely she's never coming back. But with what we learned in Loki, and how there's different variants of Loki, and how not all of them look like Tom Hiddleston, I'm like, we could cast a whole nother person as Natasha. Hell, get the voice actor that played Natasha in this show, because I thought her voice performance was great and flawless. Like, I love her vocal performance as Natasha. Like, I think her name is Lake Bell. I don't know what she looks like, but I'm like, cast her in the MCU as Natasha. Also, another thing I forgot to mention is a convenient plot in the episode where Gamora tried to use the Infinity Stone Crusher or whatever it's called, and it was like, oh, these only work for the Infinity Stones in my universe. These are different Infinity Stones, so they don't work. And remember last week where I said, how is it that Ultron's able to use the Infinity Stones outside of their universe? Because we established in Loki that they don't work outside of their respective universe. That's why they were used as paperweights in the TVA. And I was like, so why is it that the Infinity Stone Crusher or whatever couldn't work on Ultron's version of the Infinity Stones, but yet Ultron can go throughout the multiverse using the Infinity Stones with absolutely no problem. And I understand that they try to explain it away in some ways that Uatu knew that was going to happen, but it still didn't make any sense. I was like, what? But I really enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed this series overall in general. And obviously there are some episodes that I liked and loved more than others. But I would say overall for me, the entire season 1 of Marvel's What If is a hit. And I would say for me, my rankings for each episode would be episode 8, 9, 3, 2, 6, 5, 4, 7, 1. Well, that's enough about what I think. The question is, what did you guys, again, think about this series? What did you think about this episode? Where does this episode rank? What are your rankings for the episode? Did you like the series? Did you love the series? Did you think it was okay? Did you think it was a hit? Did you think it was a miss? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, if you can, again, hit that thumbs up button and like this video to really help out with the channel. If this is one of your first time checking out one of my videos, please check out the other videos on my channel. And if you like what you see, please subscribe for more and hit that bell notification button so you're alerted every single time I post a new video. And tell your friends, families, and neighbors about my channel to help me continue to grow. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.